Wisconsin is a place known for its cheese, beer, and sausages, and its country cooking and baking, right? They do a really good job with any sort of pie. And the technique we're using today sort of defies everything that you'd expect when it comes to cooking in an oven. We're gonna break some rules here. In some parts of the country, the way this pie is served is probably borderline illegal, but we're gonna go for it. So the Elegant Farmer is a small bakery in Wisconsin known for their famous and iconic apple pie baked in a brown paper bag. Yes, that's the full name, they even trademarked it. Just like the name says, the pie is actually baked in a paper bag and put in the oven. It's supposed to hold in all the moisture and kind of keep the outside from browning too fast. Apple pie needs apples, so we're gonna peel these up and then do something a little different to them that's gonna not quite cook them, but get them in a really good place for our pie. I think people trip about which apples they're using for apple pie. I think you can make a great apple pie with any apple. I've made apple pies with quote unquote soft, sweet apples, and it still turns out great. It's a hot take, I guess. If you want to get technical, sure, but I don't think it matters all too much. But today I am using a tartar green variety of apple. Classic Granny Smith's Apple Verde. Another thing, people always freak out about putting their apple in cold, acidulated water to keep it from browning. And while I think that makes sense to do when you're making something where the presentation of the apple matters, in a pie, it all turns into brown anyways, Now, some pie people like to use whole slices. I like to cut mine into more like bits because I think it's a little easier to eat in the pie and the apples get distributed better. So this pie is gonna have about 3 pounds of apples in it, which is a bunch, and that's cool because we really want this thing to be loaded with apples. Kind of not the best feeling when you get an apple pie and you break into it and it's this like massive, basically like balloon of air with only apples sunk to the bottom, So we're gonna try to avoid that. All right, we got 3 pounds of our chopped, peeled apples, ready for the next step. Some people call for cooking the apples. Other people just throw them in raw. We're doing something kind of in the middle. We're kind of cooking them, not really. We're gonna macerate them. So what we're gonna do is take all the sugar in the recipe. This is white sugar and brown sugar, and we're just gonna pour that over the apples. We'll massage this in, make sure all of the apples are covered in the sugar, and they're gonna leach out their moisture, kind of like they would if you were to salt them. And then we're gonna take that juice and do something really cool with it. Just rub them apples down like it's Dead Sea salt that you bought for $35 above market price from an Israeli guy at the mall in a kiosk. So we're gonna let these hang out for 30 minutes to an hour. We're just gonna watch them and see where they're at, and we will now get going on the crust. Pie crust in a chilled stand mixer bowl with a chilled paddle attachment. In the bowl we got butter, cubed and cold, bread flour, a little bit of kosher, and this goes on the mixer. It's important that everything's cold here so the butter doesn't melt together and smear and get all weird and melt out of the crust when we bake it. This is just a classic short crust pastry. It works for any pie, sweet or savory, like a quiche or chicken pot pie or anything. So we're just gonna stir that until the butter kind of breaks up into the flour and it looks like sand with little bigger pebbles mixed in. This is definitely like a great tool to have in your kitchen if you love to cook. This is great for both savory and sweet pies, so think quiche or chicken pot pie, or think, pecan pie, apple pie. You can also make this ahead and just kind of, wrap it tight and store it in your freezer in thought before you need to use it. It's one of my favorite things to do. All right, so once we're crumbed out, you can start streaming in the water. We use a very little bit of water, just enough for it to come together. We don't want it too hydrated or else, gluten will start to form, which is what you're not going for when you're making a short crust. Short meaning it's extremely tender, not chewy at all. Depending on your environment, it might be a little drier. You might need to add a little more water, but start in small increments. You don't want to add too much. For example, it's winter here, it's very dry, so I need to add a little more water than the recipe says. Give it a second, see if it starts to clump. Like it's starting to clump now. All right, that looks good to me. So it looks all loosey-goosey. You could just kind of take your skin mittens, form it into an oversized hockey puck / Mondo burger size, I would say. We're gonna wrap that tight with plastic. And this is gonna sit in the fridge for at least 4 hours, but if you could do this overnight, do this ahead of time, you're gonna be in a better place. The dough hydrates and it kind of comes together better and is easier to roll out. So we're gonna pop this in. But lucky for me, I'm a wannabe Martha Stewart. So I got a couple crusts ready that I made yesterday that are good to go. We're gonna dust our work surface a little bit, dust the top a little bit. It helps to have a heavy rolling pin like this. Nobody move, nobody gets hurt. So I'm working with this guy. I think it's about a 9.5 inch deep pie tin. So remember, this has tons and tons of butter in it, lots of fat. It's not gonna stick. And then I'm just going to kind of gently ease it into the crevices of the tin. Beautiful. I'm gonna trim away some of this excess crust. Not all the way to the edge, we'll do that later, but just to make it a little more manageable. Just the flaps, you know, a little flappage is preferred. Pop some holes at the bottom, help some steam escape. And if we were to add the apples in right now and then cover it up, I've done this, I'm speaking from experience, it will get too sloppy, the crust will be soggy. So we're gonna do what's called blind baking it. I'm gonna take some tin foil, just kind of line our pie with it. I'm gonna leave it sitting straight up to allow that steam to escape instead of wrapping the crust, which could actually make it soggier. Now you can buy fancy pie weights on Amazon for sure, but I just like to use dried beans and just keep reusing them. So I'm gonna fill these beans. Wonderful. We're gonna put this in a hot oven, about 425 degrees Fahrenheit for about 20 minutes, then we're gonna remove the foil, bake it for another 5, and we're gonna be all set. All right, let's remove, looking good. Take your beans off. Yeah. And look at that, still a little pale on the inside there. We're just gonna bake that for maybe like 5 more minutes. Nice, very nice. The blind baked crust ready to be filled. One of the many unique things about this pie is that the top crust isn't actually pie crust. It's a sugar cookie. I'll show you. We're gonna sift together the dry ingredients, all-purpose flour, bee pow, and a pinch of kosher. Even sweets need salt. All right, that's all you do there. Dry is done. Onto the wet. Now we're just gonna cream together some butter, 2 sticks, and the sugar. Doesn't seem too wet yet, but it will be. All right, strap that on, clap on the paddle, and cream. Un egg, and a little Niller extract. Now we'll start spooning in the dry. Now if it's looking a little dry, a little crumbly, you can just add a little dash of cream, like literally a tablespoon, not even. That'll help kind of make things a little more pliable. We're gonna get that in some plastic wrap, like a cookie book. Just kind of do one of these. And yeah, this can go in the fridge for about 30 minutes. Let it chill up a little bit, hydrate, and then we'll roll it out. All right, we got our cookie dough. It's been chilled, it's ready to roll out. Look at that brick of cookie dough. A little flour. This thing gets hard. Hear that? It's harder than our pie for sure. So if it's like this, just let it sit out for 2 to 5 minutes. It'll be fine. Now I watched an archaic YouTube video from like 13 years ago in like 103p that showed the actual bakery where they made these pies. And what they did was they rolled out their sugar cookie and then they cut them into rectangles about yay big to slap on the pie. So that's what we're gonna do. Try to get basically my ideal size out of this piece. Something like this. And then we can just go ahead and rinse and repeat the other side. And it goes without saying, but don't throw this stuff away because you can use this to either make cookies of your own or fill in little cracks and crevices if you need it. And this should be more than enough to cover our pie, which we can almost do, but we gotta check on our apples. All right, our apples have been macerating and releasing their juices. I mean, look at that. All that, it's basically a apple juice caramel we're gonna make here. So, strainer, apples, all that delicious apple juice infused sugar water. All right, we can get our drained apples back into this bowl here. So yeah, these are like cooked but not cooked, right? They're a lot more, almost like rubberier, still quite crisp. I mean, look at that. All right, we're just gonna take a little pot here, pour all that jus, apple jus, into the pot. And now we're just gonna reduce this until it's basically a semi-thin kind of medium caramel. All right, so into our drained apples, we got some cornstarch. It's gonna help thicken things. Bit of lemon juice, again, will help thicken things. Vanilla extract, and our pumpkin pie spice. There's a bunch of different spices in here. I'll have this in the recipe. And all that apple caramel, it's gonna solidify on contact a bit. Now we're just gonna mosh that around. Look at that sticky caramel just cooling onto those apples. And it looks like it's just kind of clumping, especially on my fingers here. But once you get it off, it's gonna melt into the pie very nicely. All right, so all these jagged edges, we're just gonna get rid of those with a bread knife. Just go right around the top like this. And these are snacks for the cook. Butter puff. We're gonna dump in all those apples. I mean, this is a lot of apple. When they make these at the shop, it's like piled high. So people usually dot their pies with butter, but butter has water in it. Ghee has a lot less water in it, AKA clarified butter. And it's got a crazy extreme buttery taste. And I prefer it to butter on a pie, so. Boom, bam. It's okay if they overlap. You're just making it happen at this point here. Just try to, make sure to cover it as best you can. Corners in. If you got a couple little awkward pieces here, I'm just gonna go ahead and cut this butter cookie right down the center and place it on like that. And if there's a couple little holes, that's fine. That'll allow some steam to come up, which is what you want, but this cookie is gonna melt onto itself. You shall see. But before it goes in the oven, we gotta bag it up. Olé. Paper bag, brown paper bag, big enough to fit the pie. Plop that right in the bag there. This bag is big enough where it's gonna still give it some space on the inside once we curl it up. I'm gonna take the sides here to give it a nice tent. And we're just going to curl the whole John up. Just for safe measure. We'll give it a little staple. Right there, that ain't going anywhere. And now we're gonna pop this in a 425-degree oven for about 15 minutes. It's really gonna help things set. Then we're gonna lower the heat, cook it for about 45 minutes to an hour. That bag is made of paper, and yes, it's in a 425-degree oven. It's okay, I've done this a bunch of times. Just be careful, don't go out and run errands when you're doing this. If you smell something, keep an eye on this. It's gonna be okay, I've never had an issue with it, but I also am not a fireman, clearly. But it works. They do it in the commercial bakeries too. All right, let's see what we got here. All right, a nice even bake it seems. Colors are kind of the same. Crumbo number 5. All right, this thing is looking pretty glorious, relatively glorious, I would say, but I think in order to get a better idea and understanding of how close we came, we need to do a side-by-side comparison. Ew. Pie baked in a paper bag. Look, there's the trademark. Oh, baby. The classic. Oh, look at that, sticking to the paper. Look how gooey that is though. Check that out. Now, before you say anything, this is how these pies usually look, right? It's kind of this broken, caved in cookie on top. It's by design. You go to the store, you get them fresh, they all look like this. So this is no points docked for this. It's actually just part of the vibe. Ours, a little different looking. Our cookie did not really kind of crumble inwards. It's a nice solid roof, but it's still gonna be soft and supple. Remember, this is a sugar cookie, not pie crust. So let's cut into them. I think we first start with this guy though, that's been chilling in the fridge. Should be a little more solid. Oh yeah, just falling apart. Glorious, beautiful, apple stacked, tall and proud. That is why this is such a beloved pie in this part of the country. And check out the inside here. Same thing. The cookie's kind of like crumbled and melted on. It's very unique, very delicious. And the caramel is just like stuck to the paper. Awesome. Okay, ours is a little hotter. Let's see if we can get a nice slice. How we looking? Woo! I will take that. So naturally we have a little bit more juicy juice coming out because ours is hot, but we have that cookie kind of crumbling on the top right now, apple spilling out. That differentiation right there you can see with that flaky layered crust and the crumbly cookie. I like the definition in their apples, how they're super stacked like this. That again comes from it being chilled. Looks like they use some sort of really great thickener in there, but all in all, I'd say you got the pie crust, you got the cookie, the apples, it's the same thing, just homemade. So the looks are slightly different, but I think the tastes are gonna be quite similar. All right, the final taste test. We got the original and ours. I'm gonna try the original first. Those apples are almost red in color. That's country cooking. Extremely sweet. I know it's obvious, but I had to say it. The sugar cookie brings it like up a notch from regular apple pie. I could see why people really like that. I could also see why people would say, a little too sweet for me. All right, let's try ours. Some of the crust, some of the filling, some of the cookie. The texture of our apples, a little more toothsome, a little more al dente than the original one, which is a lot softer. Spices, slightly different. I think the original has a little more spice going on in it, which I really do enjoy. You could easily add more spice to this too. But all in all, the cookie top for ours, I don't know if it's because it's warm or not, but it tastes a little more homemade, a little more like Meemaw made it for you or something, like a fresh homemade sugar cookie. Tastes a little better in my opinion. Crust-wise, I gotta say, pretty similar. Ours might be oh so much flakier, but all in all, pretty similar. I'm pretty happy with that. I think this does this justice, and I wasn't sure that was gonna be the case, but it is, so pretty happy. Hope you guys make this one. But we're not done yet. They do something very strange in Wisconsin to their apple pie sometimes. There was actually a rumor that it was in Wisconsin law that apple pie could not be served without a piece of cheddar cheese on it. That's right, cheese on your pie. Sounds weird, could also work. I've never tried it, we're gonna do it right now. Little bit of chatty, dude. Perfect. Cheddar cheese, that's Wisconsin gold right there. Get our fire brush ready. Sweaty cheese. I'm gonna try not to give this any color on the cheese, I just want it melted. I gotta say, this is bizarre. All right, cheddar cheese apple pie. That was an emotional roller coaster. Wow, yeah, it's good. That's weird, man, that works well. It's that salty, sweet contrast that you get. A little bit of goo is also welcome in my party any day. So you kind of have that like ooey, gooey, salty, not too sharp cheese that contrasts against those sweet apples, the flake from the crust, the sweet from the cookie. I get it, I really do, which is weird. I didn't know if I'd be into that or not, but cheese apple pie, baby. The Scotties are onto something, that's for sure, but we all knew, you know, super nice people, great sausages, great beer, cheese on pie, I'll take it. If you're from Wisconsin and you love this combo or hate this combo, or you're not from Wisconsin and you just want to share your opinion, hit it in the comments below. The best way to support is over on the Patreon, aka the grocery fund. It helps us put the cheese on the pie, keep the lights on, make the videos, all of that. If you like the video, go ahead and like the video. It helps the video get placed in front of more eyeballs, which is always great for us. If you're new to the chan, sub to the chan, join the Squizzod. If you're not new to the chan, welcome back. That's all I got for you this time, so until next we meet. Oh.